What's up, guys? Shade Tree Surgeon here, and I'd like to welcome you to Project Needle. The very first modification I'm going to do to this bike before I do anything else that's fun like exhaust and reeds is a steely flywheel weight. What putting this on the bike is going to accomplish is going to tame that two-stroke light switch power band a little bit. It's going to make the engine rev a little slower, which may sound like a regression, but in the woods, that's something you want. On the motocross track, that's awesome where you can turn the power on and off, but we need something a little more tractable. Basically, we're trying to make it a little bit more like a four-stroke. The flywheel weight's going to add more rotating mass to the engine, so it won't stall as easily, it'll be easier to kick over. It just gives the whole bike a little bit more momentum. So you can do that slow technical stuff that we have to do in the woods sometimes. First things first, once you've got your bike secured on a bike lift, you're going to want to go ahead and remove the ignition cover on the left hand side of the bike. In order to do that, we're going to have to do two things. Remove the shift lever and also drain the oil. Now, you don't have to drain the oil, you can just lay the bike on its right side and change this without draining the oil, but I need to change the oil in this anyway, so we're going to go ahead and do that today as well. There's just one bolt that holds on the shift lever, and on this bike it's a 10mm. It comes out easily with a wrench. It's important to remember on shift levers that in order to remove them, the bolt has to be completely removed, not just loosened. Underneath the bike, you'll find the drain plug for the crankcase oil. In this case, it's a 14mm bolt. A ratchet with a deep well socket and a short extension should work fine on this. Now that we have the oil drained, we can go ahead and remove the ignition cover. There are 6 8mm bolts that hold it on. A regular socket with an extension and a ratchet should work just fine. It may be a bit overkill, but I always like to remove the bolts in a crisscross pattern, same way as they're put on. You always want to be careful when finally removing the cover, because you'll probably be able to reuse the gasket and you don't want to mess it up when you take the cover off. Now, before we remove the flywheel nut, we're going to have to install a piston stop. You do that by removing the spark plug and putting the piston stop in its place. I got mine from Rocky Mountain ATV MC for about $7. And what this does is it screws in place of the spark plug and has a small plastic tip that the piston pushes against so you can take off the flywheel nut without the engine just spinning. Next, we're going to remove the flywheel nut, also a 14mm. Some bikes will have a washer behind the flywheel nut. This one doesn't appear to, but always make sure and check for one. Most flywheel weights will not use the washer. The flywheel weight will screw directly in counterclockwise. Hand tight is fine. Then install the special nut provided by Steely. I like to use a little bit of Loctite on mine. Then torque it down to the manufacturer's recommended specifications, in this case 27 foot-pounds. If you're working on bikes, especially two-stroke bikes, if you don't have a torque wrench, you should not be working on this motorcycle. You always have to make sure things are torqued down properly. With that being done, reinstall the cover. Always make sure to tighten everything down in a cross star pattern. And some of these bolts were already loose when I took them off, so I'm making sure to also tighten them down to manufacturer's specifications and use a little bit of Loctite. Always remember, when putting stuff back on, make sure you put everything in hand tight before you tighten anything down. This will save you a lot of headaches. Now it's time to refill the bike with gear oil. Kawasaki's manual calls for 700 cc's. I use Bel-Ray 80 weight gear saver. Make sure to remove your piston stop and reinstall your spark plug. And don't be a dumbass like me and almost try to kick the bike to life with the spark plug stop still in. Alright, this is first ride with a Steely flywheel weight installed, 2016 Kawasaki KX100. Other than the flywheel weight installed, this bike is 100% stock. This won't be an off-road test, just up and down my neighborhood. Sorry, neighbors. But let's see what kind of difference it makes. Are you fucking kidding me? It'd really help if I installed a shifter. What a fucking moron.
A few moments later.
Take 2. 2016 Kawasaki KX100 with a Steely flywheel weight, otherwise stock. And a shifter. It's right out of the gate. From an idle, it doesn't seem to rev up any differently, but it does seem to fall a little slower. Alright, well, acceleration seems still really fast, because this bike's a total fucking beast. Alright, so I'm going to do gradual acceleration from first gear into the power band and see if we notice any bit of a difference. I would say a little bit. I mean, still hard to keep the front wheel on the ground, but it's hard for me to keep the front wheel on the ground anyway because I'm a big guy. This bike is designed for my girlfriend who weighs probably about 180 pounds less than I do. Alright, let's try it on some dirt. Second gear. It definitely feels smoother, I'm not gonna lie. I might just be looking for it. Whereas before, that bottom end was just, I mean, it was really just non-existent. And now the bottom end feels like it's got a little more guts. Well, we won't really know till we get the thing back out in the woods, but just from a seat of the pants up and down my street, much to the chagrin of my neighbors, it definitely feels like it made a little bit of a difference.